All right. So, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are logging in from. And thank you very much for joining us in this fourth episode of the John Bingham series. For many of you who have worked with or known John Bingham, you know that he was always very passionate about uh, migrant worker issues. And this particular issue on the wage theft campaign, when it was launched during the COVID in 2019, John has been a very strong supporter of this, together with the other organizations that have played a key role in the development of this campaign and in sustaining this campaign, including, of course, the NGO Committee on Women, NGO Committee on Migration, and others like the Action Committee and the co-organizers of this campaign, SATUK, RCTUK, BWI, uh, CCRM, uh, GRFTD, Alianza Americas, and PICUM. Uh, we thank everybody for supporting the campaign, for being part of the campaign. There is still miles to go in the success of this campaign, but there are many ways in which you can contribute to the campaign. One is by looking up the campaign website, signing on to the pledge page that is there, where you pledge to support the campaign because you believe in the issue. Sharing with us your success stories in which you have been able to recover wages for workers, and documentation above all, wherein we can demonstrate that this is a global issue among migrant workers. The campaign was launched during the pandemic, but the issue of non-payment of wages and wage theft is a pandemic in labor migration governance in many ways. It's the constant complaint, irrespective of any kind of year, year that you document. And it happens to all, documented as well as undocumented, male and men and women migrant workers. All have been victims of this consistent crime against migrant workers in labor migration. So it would be very, very encouraging. And today it's very encouraging to see that we do have a very big number of us following on Zoom, but we also have a big number following through YouTube. For those who have logged into YouTube, we also, for the first time, have a number of languages. So we have English, French, Spanish, Arabic, Bengali, Indonesian, Bahasa Indonesia, Nepali, and Sinhala, which also shows, which has brought in through this language inclusion, we have brought in many migrant workers and members of their families who are today part of this.
ප්‍රථම වතාවට අපේ බොහෝ භාෂාවන් වලින් අපි සම්බන්ධ වෙලා ඉන්නවා. ඒකට හේතුව විදේශ ශ්‍රමිකයන් බොහෝ දෙනෙක්.
I will ask people to put on their Swadesh. If you all can keep your mics muted, please. I know this is a difficult time for many people, and many of you are Zoom logging in from home. And home means being around the family all around you, children and pets. So I would request that you keep your mics muted. Or if the secretariat could help in muting all mics, that would also be very helpful. All right. So let us begin. Once again, welcome to this fourth episode of the John Bingham series, and today we focus on the issue of wage theft. Let me begin by saying that we will begin this session today by listening to a Bangladeshi woman migrant worker who has returned from from working overseas, and she's had several work destinations, but she will share her own experience of her life abroad and kind of hopefully start set this off this discussion. We also have other people on the panel today as facilitators, resource person. We have Keely Sorensen from the Director of Policy and Government Affairs in Justice in Motion. Um, Keely is the Director of Policy and Government Affairs, where she provides strategic and operational leadership on public policy issues for Justice in Motion. And she has been a seasoned policy advocate and organizational leader who has dedicated a career to addressing labor exploitation, human trafficking, sexual violence, and international conflict. So we have Keely with us. We have Ellen Sana, Executive Director of Center for Migrant Advocacy. She is very well known within the migrant movement here in the Asia region and as globally as well, as somebody who has upheld the rights of migrant workers, women migrant workers. Our organization does a lot of policy advocacy work, facilitating assistance to distressed migrants. And Ellen has played different roles of leadership in different organizations, including MFA, as a former chair of MFA as well. We have Ekaterina Porras, founder and director of Do Bold. And Do Bold is Ekaterina is the founder of Do Bold, an organization working on migrant workers in the Gulf countries and focusing on issues of human trafficking and modern day slavery. In 2018, the organization's work was recognized and received one of the most prestigious awards and one of the finalists for the Nelson Mandela Prize, and chosen as one of the 100 sparks of hope for embodying the change the elders want to see in the world. Work has been quite substantial in looking at repatriation, for example, of 200 women from Sierra Leone who worked as domestic workers and were victims of human trafficking in Oman. So we've got a fantastic panel from around the globe, which is only a testament of the fact that this is a global issue. The Justice for Wage Theft campaign is not an Asian campaign. It is a global campaign. And in this campaign, we have from time to time connected across the globe to see how we can advance a reform of labor migration governance, a reform of the access to justice mechanisms available to migrant workers, so that this crime that happens cannot go on in this way, in which millions of migrant workers across the globe are deprived of what is due to them. What they work for, what they earn, they should receive in full the compensation that is due to them. They should not return home empty-handed. Many today return like that, but this should not be the case. And we must continue to fight for that. So let me begin today. Let me begin by inviting Maksuda Shikdar from Bangladesh returnee migrant worker, who is closely associated with the BNSK network organization in Bangladesh. Masuda?
আসসালামু আলাইকুম। আমি মাকসুদা শিকদার, বিএনএসকে আমি বলতেছি। সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ আমাকে এই সুযোগটা দেওয়ার জন্য। অশেষ অশেষ ধন্যবাদ যে আমাকে আমার কথাগুলো, কষ্টগুলো যেন বলতে পারি এখানে। এটা যেন অশেষ ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে। আমি সৌদিতে গেছি 19 সালে গেছি আমি। আর
I went
ভিসা
to Jordan in
অনেক কষ্ট করছি।
2019.
বেতন দিত না, খাবার দিত না।
I was in trouble. I was not given my salary on time. I was facing food deprivation. They used to say, I purchased you. You have to do whatever we want. You don't be allowed to have enough food. What do you expect? You have been here for work only. I've requested them. I've been over here. I have my parents, I have my kids. Please allow me to get my wages timely so that I may I can manage my family
তারপরে
well.
তারা অনেক
I
অনুরোধ
can make my
করে আমাকে
daughter
আমি তো ফার্স্ট টাইমে
study well.
কাতার গেছিলাম, আমার কাতার থেকে সৌদি নিয়ে আসছে বেড়াইতে বলে আছে তুই
I went
বেড়াবি
to
এখানে,
Qatar, but they
বেড়াতে আমি
expected
আসলাম
me
আমার নিয়ে
and took
যাইনি,
me to
কিন্তু
Saudi
আমার
Arabia from
নিয়ে যাইছে
Qatar.
কাতারে, আমাকে সৌদি রাখাইছে,
So I
সৌদি
did not have
এই আমার
any
বেতন
permission to
14 মাস
work
বেতন
there.
আমার আটকা রাখছে, আমার বেতন দেয় নাই, খাবার
They
দেয় নাই,
took
இப்பொழுது
me
இந்த
Saudi Arabia, but they
பங்களாதேஷ்
didn't
খাবারটা
return
দিছে
இருந்து
me
திரும்பி
back
வந்த
to Qatar.
புலம்பெயர் தொழிலாளி பேசிக்
দিছে
கொண்டிருக்கிறார். அவருடைய
মানে
They kept
மொழியை
me
சில வேளை
for long
பின்னர் யாரும்
in Saudi Arabia.
மொழிபெயர்ப்பார்களோ தெரியவில்லை.
আমি রান্না করতে গেছি, আমি
நாங்கள்
কাজ
பொறுத்திருந்து
করতে
பார்க்க
গেছি,
They
কাজ
used
வேண்டியிருக்கிறது.
to
শেষ
beat
করে
me
আইসা
if I used
আমি
to
বলছিলাম
a
নামাজটা
bit
শেষ
late
করে
in
আমি
my
আইসা
cooking.
আমি তোদের খাবার দিচ্ছি, বলে যে না এখন
They
তুই
used
নামাজ
to
শেষ
say
করে
me,
আস,
keep the food
তারপরে আমার
first,
টাইমে
no more
চুলা
prayer.
পাক করে আমার টাইমে নিয়ে গিয়ে আমার চুলার মধ্যে ধাক্কা দিয়ে আমার হাত মাত পুড়ে গেছে, আজও পর্যন্ত আমার
They
হাতে দাগ আছে এটা, এই
they
হাত মাত
pushed
পুড়ে
me
গেছে
to
এটার
the
মধ্যে,
oven
তারপরে আমার
and my
গায়ে
hand was
চুলার মধ্যে
burned,
ধাক্কা দিয়েছে, আমার পুরো
my
আগুন
ear was
আমার শরীরে
burned.
লেগে গেছে।
I
আর
got on
ওই
fire.
সময় আমার মানে আমার কোনো খাবার আর কোনো বেতনই আমার দিত না, আর আমি খালি কাঁদতাম, আমার ডাক্তারও দেখাইতে নিত না, তারপরে আমি
They
কান্না
did
করছি
not
যে আমার
take me
দেশে
to
পাঠায় দে,
get my food
দেশে
even.
পাঠাবো
They
তোদের
did not
টাকা
take
দে,
me to doctor.
টাকা দিলে তারপরে তোদের দেশে পাঠাবো, আমার
They
তো
used to
টাকা
say,
লাগছে, তোরা
if you
আমাকে
can
200
bring
টাকা
money from
দিতে
home,
হবে,
then we
আর
can
তোদের
send you
এই
home
টাকা
back.
দিতে হবে। তা আমি বলছি আমি গরিব মানুষ, আমি কোথা থেকে দেবো, আসছি তো তোদের এনে কাজ করার জন্য, আমার সব আমি এনে কাজ করবো, আমার মেয়েরা মানুষ করবো, আমার বাবা মাকে দিব,
I'm a poor woman. I've been
তাই না,
over here
আমি যে কিছু
to
করবো আমার
earn
জন্য,
and to
আমার
sustain my
হাজবেন্ড
family.
মারা গেছে,
How do you expect money
এরকম
from
স্বপ্ন
me?
নিয়ে গেছি, আসলে কি আমার সেই স্বপ্নটা স্বপ্নেই ছিল,
I had a
কিন্তু
dream
আমার আসার
for my
পথেও আমাকে
family and
আসতে
for
দিবে
my
না, আমি অনেক
daughter here,
কষ্ট করে আমি
but
বাংলাদেশে একটা কেস করছি,
they broke my
ওই কেসের
dream.
মাধ্যমে কেসের মাধ্যমে কেস করছে দেখে আমাকে আরো নির্যাতন করতেছে, আমার
But
মোবাইল
when I
নিতেছে,
sued a
যে
case
কেস
in
করছে সে
the
আমাকে আমাকে
Sharia
নির্যাতন
court,
করছে লেগা,
they
বলছে যে কেস
became
করবো
more
কেন,
angry
তোর
and they
খাবার
used to
রস
beat
না,
me
বেতন
more.
রস না, তোরা আমার বাংলাদেশে পাঠাস না, এই বলতাম দেখে আমার কথায় কথায় মানে পানির বোতল ফিক্কা মারতো, বাটি ফিক্কা
I
মারতো,
used to
মানে অনেক মারতো,
complain
আর
like
আমার
this, and
যেদিন আমাকে
they
নিয়ে
used to
আসবে মানে এম্বাসিতে,
repeatedly beat
রিয়াদ
me.
এম্বাসিতে, সেদিনকে
Physical
নিয়ে আসে একটা
abuse,
বোতল
mental
পুরা
abuse.
ভরা বোতল, আমার আগে তুই কেমনে বাংলাদেশে যাস আমি দেখবো, সে ভরা বোতল আমার পায়ের ভিতরে ফালাইছে, আমি
So
যাতে বাংলাদেশে
they
না আসতে পারি।
uh, they
তা আমার
broke
শুধু
a
এটুকুই আমার অনুরোধ
glass
যে
glass
আমি
bottle
এত
on my
কষ্ট করছি, আমরা গরিব
leg, and I
মানুষ,
got
আমার
hurt.
হাজবেন্ড মেয়ে নিয়ে একটা
My
মেয়ে
fingers were
বাইচে
broken.
থাকার মতো একটা অবলম্বন, আমরা গরিব মানুষ, আমার বাবা মা তেমন নাই, বিদেশ স্বপ্ন নিয়ে গেছি সেটা তো হলোই না, আবার আমি খরচ করে গেছি 1,20,000 টাকার উপরে গেছে আমার খরচ,
I had
আমি সেটা
not to
করেছি
pay
কেমনে,
anything,
আর আমি
but
বাংলাদেশে
I had
টোটাল
to
টোটাল
pay
মাসের টাকায়
120,000
খালি একবার
BTT
ঘুরে আসছি, আমার নিজের টাকাতে আমি
when I
টিকিট
went
করে
to
টিকিট কেটে
Saudi
তারপর
Arabia,
আমার
going to
বাবা মা
Qatar.
চলে
But
গেছে,
uh,
এটা আমার
on
সবার
return,
কাছে
I
আমি
did not
বলবো
get
যে আমি
anything.
যেরকম কষ্ট করছি যাতে আরো অন্য কেউ যাতে এভাবে কষ্ট না করুক,
Today, I want
আর
others to
কথায়
know
কথায়
this,
বলে যে
and
তোরে কিনে
the
আনছি,
women
তোরে
who
এই
are going
করছি,
outside and
এই
facing the
জিনিসটা
issues
আমার
of waste
খুব
theft,
খারাপ লাগে,
they
কেন
should not
আমাদের কিনে আনবো,
face
আমরা
this.
কষ্ট
Let
কষ্টের
others know
বিনিময়ে আমরা টাকা নিব,
now. They should know
সেই বিনিময়ে
where
আমাদের
they are
টাকা
going,
নিব,
how they are
আমরা
being
তো
paid.
কারো কাছে বিক্রেত হতে যাইনি,
We have not gone for
এটাই
selling
শুধু আমাদের
ourselves.
সবার কাছে অনুরোধ
We have
করবো,
gone
আমার
to sell our
অন্তর্বর্তী সরকার
labor.
শেখ হাসিনার কাছে আমার
And
এটাই আকুল অনুরোধ যে আমার মতন আরো মেয়েরা একই কষ্টতে সেম একই কষ্টতে আছে,
I'd like to
তারাও
request
যাতে
our Prime Minister Sheikh
আমি
Hasina, let
বাংলাদেশের
others know
একটা
that
এনজিওর
our
মাধ্যমে আমি
women,
সাহায্য
our
পেয়ে
girls should not
সুমাইয়া
face such sort of
বেনিসকে ওনাদের
vulnerabilities, and
সাহায্য
they should
আর
not feel such kind of hassles what they
মগবাজারের
are going through
প্রশাসনের
today.
সাহায্য আমি বাংলাদেশে এই আমার আশা,
And
আপনাদের কাছে আমি
we expect
এতটুকু
and
অনুরোধ যে
we
আমাদের
request
বাংলাদেশে
all
মেয়েরা
who are here in
যাতে
the meeting
সেখানে নির্যাতন না
that
হয়,
everybody should
তারা
get
যাতে কষ্ট না
the
পায়, বেতন
justice,
বেতন এই যে বেতন দেয় না তারা তো কষ্ট
must not
করে
face
যায়,
such
কিন্তু
sort of
করেই যায়,
troubles.
আর আমরা যদি ওখান থেকে কিছুই না পাই, আমাদের স্বপ্ন যদি স্বপ্নই থেকে যায়, তাহলে তো আমাদের বিদেশ যাওয়াটা আসলে মানে কি কি বলবো, আমাদের তো
If our
স্বপ্ন
dream is
শেষ
yet
হয়েছে,
in
আমরা
dream,
স্বপ্ন করতে পারি না,
that
পাঁচ
means
ছয় হাজার টাকার কাজ কি
all
এটা
the
আমার একটা ঘর ভাড়ার দামই
all
রাখতে
the
পারবে না,
people are
সেই ঘর
being
ভাড়া 8,000 টাকা দিয়ে
denied
একটা বাদ দিব
of
না
their
সংসার মানুষ
justice.
করবো, কোনটা করবো, তার জন্য তো ওইটা ভাইবেই বিদেশ যাওয়া, যে বিদেশ গেলে হয়তো কিছু করতে পারবো, হয়তো ঘর ভাড়া দিতে পারবো, মেয়েটাকে মানুষ করতে পারবো, কিছু না কিছু রাইখা আমি একটা মানে একটা স্বপ্নের মতন একটা
The
ঘর
money
তৈরি
what
করতে
we
পারি, যেন একটা
are dreaming to
বিজনেস
earn,
করে নিজে চলতে
if
পারি,
we fail
এটাই
to
স্বপ্ন
earn that,
ছিল,
we cannot
কিন্তু
manage
আসলে
our family.
স্বপ্নটা
We cannot
মানে
maintain
পূরণই
our
আমার পূরণ হলো না,
society
আমার
here. We
মতন
cannot
আরো
maintain
বোন
our
বোনরা আছে,
children's education
তাদেরও
here.
স্বপ্ন এরকমই রয়েছে, আপনাদের
Everybody who
সবার
are
কাছে আমার
around
একটাই
here,
অনুরোধ
all
যে
women
আমরা
are facing
বিদেশ
such
যারা
sort of
আছি
things. I think all the Bangladeshi women are facing like this who are going outside. Now it is my request to everyone who are here, please arrange to do something so that we may get our safety well. No way that others should others should get this thing, that we are being solved. When when we get a mobile phone, they snatch it away from us. They do not allow us to talk to our families, our teens, our dears and nears. How can we survive there? No food, deprivation from family communication. How life can be managed? This is my plea that all should get the justice. All everyone's rights can be entertained properly. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Maksuda, and for sharing your own experience, your own story, your own courage as well, in terms of when you said you went to the justice mechanisms, you filed a case
உங்களுடைய
kind of
கதையை
thing.
சொல்லியதற்காக நாங்கள் நன்றி செலுத்துகிறோம். விசேடமாக
Uh,
நீங்கள் உங்களுடைய பிரச்சனையை நீதியை பெறுவதற்காக கொண்டு சென்றிருக்கிறீர்கள்.
I think there's an overlap with the one of the interpreters, but again, Masuda, thank you very much for your own story, for your own challenge that you have put, for the courage that you had.
சவால்கள் நீங்கள் மிகவும் சிறப்பான முறையில் எதிர்நோக்கி இருக்கிறதற்காக உங்களுக்கு நன்றி சொல்கிறோம்.
In filing the case kind of thing. And
வழக்கை
if you see the chat box, there is also support messages for you in the chat box.
இந்த chat boxல உங்களுக்கு
also,
ஆதரவு தெரிவித்து பலர் கருத்து தெரிவித்திருக்கிறார்கள்.
And I asked the interpretation team to see, look at it's the whatever language that is mixing with mine.
மொழிபெயர்ப்பு என்னுடைய பேச்சோடு இடர்படுவதாக நான் கருதுகிறேன். அதுல ஏதோ பிரச்சனை இருப்பதாக நினைக்கிறேன்.
And the audios overlap. That is true. I think that is something that is happening. So if I can ask the technical people to kindly look into this.
தொழில்நுட்ப
It's still overlapping. But thank you so much, Maksuda. And thank you also for continuing the fight. I know you are currently with BNSK, and you're in the cafe, Women's Cafe Return, Migrant Women's Cafe that has been set up in the BMET office, the Bangladesh Overseas Deployment Office. And over there, you engage prospective migrant workers in giving them information of a safe migration process. So thank you for being part of that. And thank you for being part of this webinar today to share your own story. Let me then now bring in our panelist as well. As you listen to this witness of Maksuda, and I'm sure you have your own cases that you have dealt with and continue to deal with. But let me ask Kili if you can come in here at this stage, and largely to again
right.
I guess to be able to, is there something similar that you have dealt with in your own region kind of thing? Is this a global phenomenon, or is this really something that is relegated to one part of the world in one migration corridor and things like that? And what are some of the successes that you have had that people like Maksuda and others can look for in terms, and we could look for in terms of hope, in terms of, yes, this is a struggle, continues to be a struggle, but there are moments of victories, small victories that that we can kind of give us courage to keep moving on. Kili, your own work, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks, William, to you and to all the organizers, and certainly to all the participants here who are doing amazing work every day. And I also want to extend a special thank you to Maksuda for sharing her harrowing story and her message of hope and continued commitment to support workers seeking justice around the world. Yeah, certainly this is a global phenomenon, not specific to any region per se. Justice in Motion focuses particularly on workers who have experienced labor abuse, among other types of abuse, in the United States, but who originally are nationals of Mexico and Northern Central America, El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua. And we see very similar stories to what Maksuda has shared. And I think depending on the isolation that a worker experiences, those can be exacerbated quite extremely. Sometimes when workers are with a larger group of other people, that could be a lifeline to them, but not necessarily either, right? So one of the things I suppose I'd like to share is just how we work so that it's clear why we see some hope in specifically legal recourse for work.
இந்த விடயங்கள் தொடர்பாக நாங்கள் இவ்வாறான
Providers across borders to gather evidence for cases that are seeking damages. And in this case, talking about underpayment or non-payment of wages, but certainly other cases as well, like human trafficking. The assistance is given through this case facilitation model.
এটার সাথে আমরা যদি একটু দেখি যে এখানে
මන්දම්ම හරි හරි මගේ කෝවලක් වෙනවද?
I think the interpretation is crossing again.
Yeah, can I ask the technical team to look at this, because Keely's voice keeps coming in and out, fading because of the overlap of the audios. Go ahead, Keely, continue.
Okay. So the way that this model works is we connect US lawyers and advocates who are handling cases on behalf of clients with legal defenders who happen to operate and reside in the countries that I mentioned in Mexico and Northern Central America. The Defender Network includes about 40 plus experienced human rights advocates in those locations, and they provide on-the-ground support for the lawyers in the US, but equally for the clients so that they can keep their cases on track. I think the key element here is that as cultural insiders, they understand the various issues that are going to come up for a client after they've usually been forced to return home, that are going to get in the way of presenting their case. And so it's really proven invaluable, and it's sometimes represents a third of the legal cases that our team is facilitating. So some examples of the kind of work that they look to do is to travel to a politically unstable town or region to obtain collective action member signatures for a worker who was never paid the legal minimum wage. They search remote regions of these countries where workers had to pay illegal kickbacks to recruiters, so they can advise them on types of lawsuits that might be available to them that we've learned about from US advocates. Or they might locate workers who are owed damages because the Department of Labor in the US doesn't know how to find them. So we help the agencies here in the US locate workers to make sure that they can get paid. But when it comes to investigations, and this is quite common, we help people file private right of action. So when an agency, the Department of Labor, the Department of Homeland Security, chooses not to file criminal charges against an employer, then a worker can file civil charges. But to do so requires obtaining signatures, submitting testimony for a deposition. And these things can happen while a worker is in their home country, but you need stable internet connection. You need access to a safe environment where people aren't going to overhear you talk about large sums of money that you expect to be returned to you, because that could be unsafe for you and your family. They will help collect evidence. They'll understand the questions. They can print things off on printers and read through various legal papers together. They can practice depositions on video with the US attorney from their office. These are really basic things, but these are things that will make or break someone's ability to file a successful suit and to claim to the degree that it is required under the law, to claim and provide all the evidence to support that claim. So these are really, really common issues here. And a lot of people will never file claims because they don't have access to networks like this that can work together from the US to the country of nationality. But in these cases, in these countries, we do have these relationships set up, and we want to encourage these kinds of relationships globally because they work for workers. We also support, as I said, agencies. So when there is a criminal investigation or if there's an administrative claim, so the Department of Labor, the Department of Homeland Security file an administrative claim, that's where the agency does support this and they're pursuing the employer. Oftentimes, if a worker is returned, they will never see the money that's collected. And so this is one of the only ways that we've also been able to successfully help these agencies, distribute tens of thousands of dollars to workers who might never know that that this money became available to them. They would never know it, and they would feel they would never see any form of justice if they weren't connected to these lawyers' networks. I'll stop there. It's just a taste of kind of the support that this network provides, and we're eternally grateful for those 40 plus organizations that choose to be a part of this. And really, again, just to honor the workers who have the bravery to come forward and see these claims through, which can take years upon years sometimes. So thanks.
Oh, thanks, Keely. And I like this. I like just to say that we within MFA also work very closely in similar kind of pattern. I like the concept of the cultural insiders and helping make that contact and things like that. I see Sumita Krishna is here, and we've just had a massive case just along those lines, a massive successful case that was lodged. That Sumita, as a lawyer in Malaysia, worked with partners in India who had returned who had to find the returned migrant workers and get the deposition for the case and things like that. So I'm sure she's very happy to hear that this pattern is something that works across the globe. But definitely, it's something to look at. We've got a Lawyers Beyond Borders network here that tries to work along those lines, kind of thing. But I think one of the challenges that we have is there doesn't seem to be much of a pro bono culture within the region, which is the biggest destination region for us, where Masuda also goes to, and that is the Gulf region. There's very little of a pro bono culture there, kind of thing. But it's definitely something to think about, and we are looking at how to create that kind of infrastructure that could work along those lines. Can I just ask you very briefly, let's say 2021 or 2022, were you able to the successful cases in terms of how many claims were there, in terms of millions of dollars, thousands of dollars, and how many was recovered? Is there any figures like that y'all keep?
No, I don't have figures like that, but I can tell you that there unfortunately is a big difference between being successful in the case and securing actual money for workers, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're nodding, you know this. That is no different in the United States. So another area that we do try to support workers on, and this does, like you said, require even more pro bono support because there's no money to obtain, is those US workers will shift their attention from winning that claim to trying to get property liens, try to get asset forfeiture, however they can, in order to, so that could take another few years. But unfortunately, no, it will not always be successful, and it will not always often be successful. And I think that there's a big difference especially when you're not working with these networks, I think the workers can feel abandoned. I won a case and nothing changed. But I think in working with these networks, there's at least someone in country who can support that worker through those feelings of loss and that feeling of continuing to be wronged when that is the result. And unfortunately, it is the result often.
Thanks, Keely, for that. And I mean, even just listening to you, and you're right, I was nodding my head because it resonates so well, kind of thing. And I'm wondering, as we, every year IOM brings out statistics of number of workers, migrants in the world increasing and things like that. And World Bank brings out number of remittances flows increasing like that and kind of thing. So there's always these figures given. And it would be fantastic if somewhere we came together as workers and labor movements kind of thing to say what is lost, how much is actually lost and never recovered, and what is that impact of that loss in the life of a migrant worker, the community, and things like that, and to look at to push for a more what should I say, accountable kind of mechanism for migrant workers that is more expedited, that's accessible and things like that. And this might be something that we can start brainstorming on, thinking together kind of thing as we work together on this campaign. But thank you for that kind of resonance with this issue that is on the table today. Let me at this stage then let me ask Ellen to come in. And Ellen, I'm sure again you've been part of the campaign. You've had some success with the Philippine government now taking up the campaign as a major campaign of the major ask of the Philippine government to countries of destination. How are you currently poised in this campaign, and what are you thinking of in terms of next steps are moving forward on the campaign? Ellen?
Yeah, hi everyone. Greetings from Manila. Very late already here, but it was very good to listen to Kili. Just before this session, I was going through the YouTube to check out issues of wage theft, and as you said, Kili, this is nothing new. You know, local workers and of course migrant workers are victims of wage theft. And of course, definitely, I agree with you, Kili. There will always be legal remedies to this. Yeah, most often than not, there will be legal remedies to go about it. But then, as I listened to the forum in New York, organized by the Philippines, we have successful cases as well. Not very many, maybe, but because we also have this joint and solidarity provision where the workers can go after the recruiters once they are back in the Philippines. But there are cross-border cases, but they were filed not not by the migrants themselves alone, because it would be very, very challenging in terms of like how to proceed with it, especially when the worker is already back in the Philippines. But one case that was cited in the forum was it was successful because of the assistance provided, legal assistance provided by the government. And I think if you will go legal, which will always be an option for us, and I think especially post-pandemic, cross-border litigation, having very strong, all you need to do is having very strong connection with the Wi-Fi stable and all that. We've been part of some cases of migrants where the migrants are back here and then they have to stand in the witness, but then virtual. Yeah. So, but again, I think at the end of the day, it could take years and years without even the assurances that they will get the money. Because as we also experience here, we have a lot also of paper victories, as they are called. The cases are filed here, money claims cases, and the ruling was in their favor. But then at the end of the day, no money was being collected because either the employer, the agency disappeared, or there is no way to enforce it. So we will always also say to the workers that when you file, You file, the respondents will not only be the individual, not only the campaign, the agency, but all their officers of it. And you make sure that as the case is being heard, you try to investigate about their properties. Because at the end of the day, if they cannot collect money, then there is a possibility to collect whatever assets the respondents may have. But again, it's always like easier said than done for most of these workers who, as William was saying, they came home empty-handed, very distressed, and they are not the rich migrants that we are talking about. They're the low-wage migrants, which who at the onset of their migration journey is already running a high deficit of as high as 12% less salary than a local worker who is working for the same type of work. So that's the gross injustice, and that's why in this global campaign for justice against wage theft, what we are trying to do is to make it easier, expedite. Don't let the workers just use, business as usual, the existing legal remedies. But this is the time when you need to make an intervention, step up the intervention, and it has to be the states, taking very firm decision that, oh, this cannot be done just by the migrants alone. We need to intervene, and this will be for the benefit of everybody. And again, I would refer to that forum in New York where the ILO would say, oh, and we already have the tool, the standard as early as 1949, and it doesn't go out of fashion. The wage protection convention, etc. And now we have the e-protection, digital, and what have you. But then at the end of the day, what have we got for the workers whose wages and other benefits have been stolen? So I think it's very inspiring on the side of the Philippines that we are taking up this issue, not only locally, but also at the international level, because as I said, this would require whole of government and whole of society and the whole international community to make a lot of these things happen. Of course, the little victories, we will always have those. But at the end of the day, what we are saying is that there is urgency to address this issue. So it cannot be filing one case after the other and you wait. And it's very interesting that very recently we have this news article in the Philippines saying that our seafarers will not probably be very attractive in the coming days to be hired by the manning agencies because the seafarers kept on filing cases, money claims cases against the principal. So my first reaction was, oh, but that is good that they are standing up for their rights. The problem also, when you go very legal about these things is, as Kelly was also mentioning, if the workers do not know how to proceed, then they will be taken over. The whole thing will be taken over by the lawyers. And at the end of the day, the complainants themselves will be out of the picture. And this is what we call the ambulant chasers. Lawyers filing this money claims on behalf of the seafarers in this case, but then at the end and they will win the case, but then the workers are not getting anything. And this is the context of that report, that because of these so many money claims being filed, the manning agencies and the principals may be looking on the other nationalities for the seafarers. But I mean, it's an issue of, you can always be legal about it. But again, what we're trying to emphasize here, then there's also this thing, William, in the Philippines, as you may know, we try to expedite by doing things out of court. So we have this a conciliation mediation process before a worker can decide to bring the matter to the courts or to the labor courts. But our issue here, when you apply it in the case of migrant workers, is that the workers are prompted to meet with their employers when they are not ready, what they would ask or demand from the workers. And again, this is our one case, individual cases being filed. So again, I think this is something that will not be applicable in cases where you have massive returns of workers. So I think it's very good on the part of the Philippine government. They have taken it up again in the international forum following the IMRF. We were happy that wage theft was mentioned in the IMRF, and this was picked up by the Philippine government to remind the international community, including themselves, of the responsibility and obligation that they owe, that we all owe to the migrant workers. But I think it would require, because I think like in the case of the local workers owing a lot to employers in the US, the system in the US is quite different from what we have here back here in Asia or in the Middle East. And again, as again in reference to that New York forum, as the Undersecretary for Migrant Workers said, we have a very big issue, but the solution, this is a no one size fits all situation. So we also have to take into consideration how we will be enforcing a lot of these things, context-based, region-based. But at the end of the day, it's all about wages, again, being stolen. And yeah, definitely, this is practically stealing the lifeline, not only of the workers, but of the entire family, who depend a lot on the salaries. And the reason, that is the very reason they left the country, they left behind their families, is because of these wages. But legal battle, taking up this on their own is very, very, very difficult. And but at the same time, as the Sri Lankan ambassador mentioned, but this is neither a charity case, neither a charity case. So I think in the story of Maksuda, everybody can relate to it, that they are not like items being bought. You know, these are people that they need in the countries of destination. So I think I stop there. Thank you.
No, thanks, Ellen, for that. And again, you have raised, and I think what the point you have raised is also very critical in terms of in the pursuance for justice and what you called relying totally on the kind of legal, are we losing somewhere the empowerment of workers kind of, how do you get access to justice and empowerment of workers, this workers movement, to ask for justice, to work together, so it doesn't become what we've seen in our region, with many cases of exploitation of migrant workers, what you have called ambulance chasers, lawyers who take up cases because there might be something in that for them. Like I said, there is no pro bono culture here, kind of thing. So in some of the parts of the region, so it might be something to kind of look at. Kili, you had talked about the cultural insiders, which I think is a good way of looking at how the legal fraternity works with and connects with the workers movement and the workers themselves and the community. I think that will be important. That's an important link to make, and that should not be disconnected. And Maksuda is a good witness of that, because I know she's also linked to an organization even as she's pursuing justice for her case. But I'll give something for both of you to think of. I really wish this is called the John Bingham series, and if I really wish he could have moderated it, being a lawyer himself. He would have had some very intriguing thoughts, kind of thing. But let me do a poor kind of take on his seat, kind of thing. But I was wondering, because in our campaign currently, people have talked about maybe we should make it a criminal case. Now, I'm not sure in the US now whether this is a criminal case or a civil suit kind of thing. But there is a lot of momentum around, even some lawyers talking about making it a criminal offense kind of thing. Wages kind of. I'd like you all to both to think if what would be the merits or demerits of such a thing. The other thing, MFA is currently, and we have almost come to or rather we've come to an end of the study. We are going to have a launch of it, and we are looking at wage theft as one of the, of course, ILO will bash us for this, but we are looking at wage theft as one of the indicators of forced labor. And if we find that, do we get a bigger platform then to make this case of wage theft as a big offense against migrant workers? Is that something worth looking at? Other than that, I was wondering, Kili, is there avenues that you have, like the Inter-American Court of Justice or something like that? Those kind of bodies that can take this up, kind of the issues like this, or Ellen, the ASEAN Forum on Labor and Migration, or Abu Dhabi Dialogue, Colombo Process. Yeah, should we be looking at how to, make a bigger projection of this kind of thing in platforms like this? So these three things I'll ask you to just think about and come back to me on this as I invite now for her thoughts on this. Let me call on Ekaterina, who is from director of Do Bold, and you've played a very critical role in working with migrant workers in the Gulf region, which is also the big kind of region of destination for Asian migrant workers. What are some of the challenges that you are looking at? I know because there is lesser infrastructure support for many African nations in the Gulf, so it must be an even bigger challenge kind of thing, as the Gulf is being explored as a new market for migrant workers from Africa. But your work seems to already made great highlights kind of thing in terms of some successes. Would you like to share with us how you are dealing with this issue yourself at the moment?
Yes, thank you, William, and thank you everyone for spending time here listening to what we are working on. And it's also very nice to see everyone. I know we are like in a virtual meetings now since COVID, and it's very nice to see that there are people behind. So if you can just turn your camera on to see that you are there and that you're listening and that you're taking part of this. If you can't, don't. but we are humans, and I really enjoy keeping that human touch as we talk about these issues that are affecting humans. Thank you, William, and thank you, Keely and Elena, for sharing your efforts and what you're working on. So yes, we are focusing in the Gulf countries. We are helping all nationalities, so not only women and men from African countries, but also from South Asia and East Asia. Especially during COVID, we started getting a lot of requests of support from different nationalities from different African countries. And that's what we have been focusing a lot, just because of the amount of information that we have received. As you mentioned, William, in the introduction, we do a lot of repatriations. This is some direct support that we are offering ongoing, all nationalities. And one of the main reasons why we need to do this is because they are not getting paid. They didn't receive their salary. They cannot go home. How are they able to go home without receiving any salary? So repatriation is a big part of our work to make sure that they are safe. Unfortunately, as many of you know, civil society in the Gulf countries is closed, meaning that there is no NGOs working on the ground, trying to do this kind of work and supporting the workers, going to the Ministry of Labor or filing any charges. There is minimum support from NGOs on the ground just because of the inability to do so. Regarding wage theft, our first focus when somebody contacts us is making sure that they're safe. Unfortunately, we have had very few migrant workers asking us to support them to get their wages that they lost, because their priority is to return home safe. Nevertheless, we did, during COVID especially, we started monitoring businesses, and we documented large numbers of wage theft. Within those cases, we documented just from one company, 700 workers from 4 different countries. And we documented exactly what was happening. And actually, in this case, the workers didn't know that they were victims of wage theft. They came to us because they needed food. It was during COVID. That was the first issue. The second issue is that as they were being terminated, they were confused. Why were they not receiving their end of service benefits according to the years they have worked there and according to the salary that the contract that they signed back in the Philippines? So throughout this process and understanding and investigating what is happening, we ended up we found out that actually the workers were victims of wage theft. So they did not know, even though some of them worked there for more than 10 years. So the challenges that we face are multi-layer, from the basic understanding what is wage theft. If we speak about domestic workers, when they start working or when they are about to finish their 2-year contract, the first 3 months or the last 3 months, often they don't receive their salary. In order for the employer, hi, Sabahan, Ali. In order for the employer to cover their cost. And there are many domestic workers that they see it as they have to go through this. So that's a basic challenge that we face when empowering, and not empowering, but letting them know that this is wrong and it should not be happening. All the way to the challenges of accessing justice. What can you do if you're not receiving your wages as you're supposed to? There is very limited access to justice. If somebody is fired, for example, from their work, they have 30 days to leave the country. You cannot do anything in 30 days. So if you want to press charges, not only do you have to pay, this is talking about not the domestic work sector, who is not under the labor law. We're talking about other industry, construction, the service industry, where they have 30 days to start this process, and then they have to pay for their visa in order to stay, to continue, try to get legal remedies. And even if the court says, yes, you deserve your money back, it doesn't mean that actually they're going to be compensated. And that we have seen as well. Companies will not compensate the workers, even if it has been told by a judge. So we have different challenges, all the way from becoming aware to understanding what is wage theft, all the way to accessing remedy. And in the case of the workers that I mentioned, the 700 workers, we have been trying to access justice, but not in the Gulf countries, because the company that is in question was a European company, and they have different responsibilities. So we were trying to do that under their jurisdiction. The company has been bought by an American company. So now we are looking in the US, but not in the Gulf.
Oh, that would be really, really interesting. And really, I hope you pick that up kind of thing of a company in the US, because I know that there are today supply chain kind of business kind of legislation and things like that. This California Act, and now Germany has passed something as well on supply chain kind of labor exploitation kind of. This would be fantastic to see if we can actually do this. But you are on the same, and if you need us to connect you through emails and things like that, happy to do that. But it would be really good to see how we can make these connections. But thank you for that, Irina, because you know, when you say your challenges are just that first awareness kind of thing, it just shows, and this is what I keep saying, you know, this system is such that it just exploits deeper and deeper kind of thing, because the impression is that there is a huge supply side. And I've seen this in the Gulf at the moment, because there were many Asian workers, but I see now a large inflow of African workers, and the assumption that, you know, the more vulnerable workers that you can bring from countries that don't have labor migration governance, the better your chances of exploiting them. And that is what we are seeing with a lot of African workers in the Gulf. So hats off to you for picking up this struggle and creating that awareness, and for just being there for in a very difficult kind of environment to work on this. But wow, 700 cases in just one company, and the documentation you have. I was just thinking a little while ago, while you said the 700 cases, the current wage that website that we have does have space for us to share documentation, you know, in some kind of general way in terms of numbers kind of thing. So we can show that this is impacting. But listening to Kelly and Ellen as well, I was wondering if it would be good to do some kind of a compilation of success cases and things like that, so that we can learn from some of the success stories as well. That might be something to kind of, and to see how we develop a mode of sharing some of our kind of successes we have. But then let me come back again to you, to that question, Ili, that I put in terms of can it be a criminal offense? Should it be a criminal offense? Should it be an indicator of forced labor? Would that help? Because everybody wants to work on trafficking and forced labor kind of thing. So would it help to make more visible this challenge in the life of migrants? And systems that might be in place that we have not explored, or I don't know if you have explored, like the Inter-American Court of Justice. Haley first, and then Ellen.
Sure. Thank you. Good questions. And I'm tapping the legal team because I'm not technically on the legal team. So hats off to them as I'm connecting with them as everyone is chatting. So just for reference for criminal cases, it's really based on state law in the US. Some states will do this. It's really uncommon though. So depending on the severity of the case, and I mean, I actually think that the example we just heard, right, 700 workers affected, that's the kind of thing that might ease us into the criminal space a little bit more convincingly. We need local prosecutors to be interested in these cases. We need victims to come forward in these cases in order for those kinds of charges to be brought. But it is possible that a state labor bureau can do that and will do that. But I think there just needs to be a lot at play in order for that to be a convincing use of what I would say is an extremely under-resourced area of administration in the US. Department of Labor is notoriously under-resourced compared to the other forms of investigative bodies like the Department of Justice or the Department of Homeland Security. So it's just something that we would probably need to be more intentional about building up to pursue more of these cases. For forced labor, so forced labor and wage theft the connection is often raised here in the US. In fact, the National Human Trafficking Hotline produces reports every few years looking at, in particular, migrant workers and abuse on temporary foreign work visas. And they'll look at like 3 of the common indicators that workers report to their hotline, and wage theft is always in the top 3. So that is a really common thing that people look for when they're investigating trafficking. That is a common thing that we advocate for the various administrative agencies to seek out for indicators of trafficking. And we also say, as do other advocates, that if you want to crack down on crimes like human trafficking, crack down on wage theft, because that is one of the most ever-present features of those cases. And we need a different strategy. So look for wage theft. Let's crack down on wage theft. Let's put more resources behind it. For the Inter-American Court, it's such a good question. I don't know about this. I don't know that like how the state and the federal laws around wage theft and wages and minimum
Hello,
pay.
ma'am. Excuse me.
Yes.
Can I talk something?
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
I am from Bangladesh. I want to know something. Can I?
Sure.
Audio problem. I can't hear you.
Brother, if you'll just hold in a little while, our technical people will open it up. If you will just hold.
I can't hear anything.
Kili, you want to finish that thought first?
So I
Okay, Mohammed, sorry, I think they're working on it. All right, so just, yeah, we're just not sure if, like, yes, how it would work in the Inter-American Court. A lot of, yeah, so I think that's something that we have to think about, and maybe we can continue a conversation about that.
Thanks for that. And that is actually very good what I just heard, because we are only doing our first research on trying to identify wage step as an indicator of forced labor. So if you've got stuff that we can read or look at and stuff like that, that'll be really, really super helpful, in our current kind of advocacy on this. And yes, I'm just thinking at some stage, because on Inter-American Court of Justice, largely because migration being this kind of, domain of international relations in some way between states through bilateral or trade agreements and mobility agreements and things like that, we would need some kind of a regional mechanism to start saying that something is wrong with it. You have it in trade for goods in the WTO, you have this kind of complaints mechanism, and they start looking into it and stuff like that. You have this in commerce, kind of global commerce kind of thing. So why not in these kind of mobility agreements at the regional level? It might be something worth looking at, and definitely something that we are exploring. So thanks for those thoughts. Ellen?
Yeah, okay. Maybe I will respond first to the second, like, can wage theft be an indicator of forced labor? Because if my answer to this is in the affirmative, that this can be a part of indicator of forced labor situation, and forced labor is, if I can connect it to trafficking, and trafficking is a crime, then I will say that you can consider it a criminal case, right? And of course, as you mentioned, William, at the beginning of the conversation, we are talking not only of wages being stolen, but there are like 12 or 14 situations where migrants are deprived of monetary benefits and other benefits. And like in the case of Maksuda, we also heard that she was deprived of food. So if you're denied food or denied food allowance, then eventually if you don't eat, you die. So what could be, how else can you define it? It's not only like a civil case, but it's, your employer is deliberately letting you go and you letting you die. So I think you can go as severe as that, and definitely you can challenge that. Okay, how else can you classify this? This is a typical case of non-payment of wages, but the people they can have a mental breakdown, etc., etc. So I think we have to be clear also when we say wage theft in the context of migrant workers means a lot of other things, not only about wages being not paid or being paid in reduced rates, etc., but so many other things. That perhaps this is one difference with like local workers, maybe, Kili, that of course, again, if we are saying COVID has exacerbated a lot of these vulnerabilities of the migrants. So in the case of wage theft, which is also happening to local workers, but again, in the case of migrant workers, there is always that a higher level of severity. Whether you are talking of workers that are still in the countries of destination, as the cases cited by Katarina, or those who have returned to their countries, they become, of course, it becomes really more challenging. So I think so I think, yeah, you can always be open to those issues and stretch it, not stretch it forcefully, But I think it eventually becomes a case of forced labor, trafficking. And then eventually, why can't you classify it as a criminal case or a criminal offense when you are enslaving people who went there legally with contracts and everything, and then suddenly you are shortchanging them with a lot of these things that they should be able to get just to go by, to live by each day. So that's my answer, William. But maybe if I may interject on the point raised by Ekaterina. Yeah, because of course you mentioned a lot of the Filipinos as well in the Gulf. If I may, if you will indulge me, William, I was just wanted to say that yes, Katerina, a lot of our workers would just want to go home. But I think this wanting to go home is not because they don't want to have justice on the cases, but it's just that either they have lost faith that something will come out of it, because if they would just be left on their own, how can they fight the battle? And unfortunately, for many situations of our workers, like in the Gulf, they're not even oriented, like, oh, this is your case and these are your rights, and we will be here to give you assistance, etc. So you don't hear that. Very, very seldom that our people at the embassies or the polos would really like assert that, oh, you have to fight it out here and not come back home as yet. So unfortunately, and then of course, it's also tied to this whole issue of immigration that, okay, there is justice mechanism, but you only have like 30 days. Of course, this is very reminiscent. This is something similar to what you have in Hong Kong, where you only have 14 days. So how can you have justice in work on justice for this very limited time when you are looking or demanding for your wages and other benefits, and you only have 30 days? And yeah, so many things that you have to, these are all interconnected, William. And I think we cannot lose sight of all these things, because they are very real challenges that individual migrants have to confront it when they stand up for justice. That's why we have cases of people who are repatriated. They stood up for their rights, and they would regret standing up for their rights, because at the end of the day, they would find themselves with no jobs and no money because they were just left on their own. So I stop there. Thank you.
Thanks for that. But I think the strength of your emphasis is on that we have to continue this fight kind of thing and see how we continue to make connections to this becoming a very exploitative kind of dimension of labor migration governance. And I think this is so important that we continue this. Karina, with any within the African Union or configurations of the African intergovernmental processes, is there anything that shines out as a place where you can take these issues?
I'm sorry, William, you were asking me?
Yes, yes.
We have not sought legal access to justice in their sending country when it comes to wage theft. We have provided information that has led to human trafficking cases that we have, but not for wage theft. Nevertheless, I do want to say that because where we work is so difficult to really access justice, what we are trying to do is actually collect data that has not done before, that the governments do not collect. Embassies also are behind on this. So we are collecting information in detail, all the way from the recruitment process through whether there was exploitation, all the way to returning, and that includes wage theft. As much as information we can receive, and it's also very important to understand actually what kind of business is this generating for others, because at the end somebody is taking this money, right? So we want to understand really what is happening. So we are very keen in collecting this data, and to my understanding, we have the biggest data set on domestic work in Oman, if not in the region. And we are really focusing on this, because only by having this data, we will be able to address the situation. As long as nobody sees this as a problem through data, I really believe it's going to be so hard to address it. So that's what we are trying to do through the data. And very quickly, just addressing what Ellen said, yes, it is not because they want to leave the country because they know that to seek justice is so difficult, especially for domestic workers. If you're a domestic worker and you want to file charges against your employer, you have to do that while you are living with your employer. So just imagine how uncomfortable that would be, that you go to the police, file a case against your employer, and you go back to their house. That doesn't work. Talking about domestic workers. So I understand they leave because this is the fastest way to regain their freedom and regain their dignity, and not because they don't want their wages. That's what they went there for, and that is very important. And also one more thing about the embassies. We have had cases where the worker wants to file charges, but it is persuaded by embassies not to do so, just because it's going to be long and it's going to be a lot of work. So it is often we have heard that persuasion from embassies not to file charges because it's going to be more work for the embassy. It's going to be around 2 years is the normal process that it takes. So it's a multi-layer issue, unfortunately.
Thanks, Ekaterina, for that. And I like what you're saying. Without the evidence, we are not going to be able to make a strong case kind of thing, and the data that you are saying. Look, I know we've even had trouble just getting the concept understood with institutions that should be the kind of keepers of international standards kind of thing, you know. So there is a reluctance to look at this concept of wage theft, but I think just this campaign alone and our work that you are doing together, I think that is substantive, in which we bring together to show that this is real. Wage theft is real and it is a crime. Let me open this up, the flow for very, very short interventions. We are like 10 minutes away from, or 15 minutes away from ending. I see Binod's hand going up. I saw Mohammed earlier trying to make an intervention. I see Mr. Mahmoud Arfat. I see Binod. I see Lakshman as well, and let me say Lakshman Basnet, who has been a strong advocate for migrant workers' rights from SATUC, the South Asian Trade Union Network, and very involved in trying to get the ILO to take up this issue. I know he's done a lot of work in trying to get the governing body to pay attention to this issue. It would be great to hear if there are any updates on that. But let me start with the very, very short. I will ask you to be very short. Mohammed Arafat first. Mohammed, you want to come in and take your question?
Ji. I'm Mohammad Mizanur Rahman. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm a civil engineer. Now I work at a Japanese company and I want to go Romania. I got my visa. In Bangladesh, recruiting agency make many problem. They till now they didn't take my signature at contact paper. When give my flight, that time he takes signature at contact paper.
এক্সকিউজ মি মোহাম্মদ ভাই আপনি বাংলায় বলেন বাংলায় বলেন ট্রান্সলেট করে দেব
No, it's okay. Sumaya is
স্যার আমি মোহাম্মদ মিজানুর রহমান বাংলাদেশ থেকে বলছি আমি সিভিল ইঞ্জিনিয়ার বর্তমানে ঢাকা হযরত শাহজালাল আন্তর্জাতিক এয়ারপোর্টে সিভিল ইঞ্জিনিয়ার হিসেবে জাপানি কোম্পানিতে কর্মরত আছি আমি এর আগে ইরাকে জব করে আসছি কোরিয়ান কোম্পানিতে এখন আমি রোমানিয়াতে যেতে চাই এবং আমি রোমানিয়ার ভিসাও পাইছি কিন্তু বাংলাদেশের রিক্রুটিং এজেন্সিগুলো অনেক রকম সমস্যা করে। তারা যে পরিমাণ টাকা শুরুতে চায়, ফ্লাইটের আগে সেই টাকার পরিমাণটা আরো বাড়িয়ে নেয় এবং কন্ট্রাক্ট পেপারেও সিগনেচার নেয় না। ঠিক ফ্লাইটের আগ মুহূর্তে কন্ট্রাক্ট পেপারে সিগনেচার নেয়, সেখানে স্যালারিটা কমায় দেয়। এবং প্রথমত আমাদের স্যালারিটা কমায় দিল কন্ট্রাক্ট পেপারে, দ্বিতীয়ত হলো আমাদের থেকে বেশি টাকা দাবি করে এবং ফ্লাইটটাও ঠিক থাকে না। তো
For the flight and they write the amount in the contract paper less than whatever they have said earlier. And they do not do it themselves. They make it through their sub-agents. And they takes money from the sub-agents so that as a recruitment agent, they do not face any trouble legally. What can we do at this situation? Can you help us?
Okay, thanks, Mohammed, for that question. And that's a very classic kind of operation of recruitment agencies in Bangladesh, of getting the contract signed at the last minute and then deducting wages and things like that. I would ask you, I think there's a BNS case, Sumaya, who is there. I would suggest, Sumaya, if you can contact with Mohammed to make that connection of how you could actually look into this particular case. Binod?
Yeah, thanks. William, can you hear me? Am
Yes.
I audible? Okay. Well, I should say that it's fascinating listening to the three speakers on various issues. And I think the common thread that I can see there in terms of our movement is data. And we have to ask a second question in terms of what kind of data. And that's where I think we need to join hands, but and supplement the legal fraternity by perhaps my own fraternity of economists. And I would like to reiterate what I said in Manila in October, that this is suicidal. We have to look at the wastage, at the loss, which is created at the global level in the macro terms by the wage theft, because wages are the largest component of the gross domestic product, along with interest and rent and other things. But these are technical matters. We need to join hands and try to supplement this by saying that it is not only at the micro level that the workers are the victims. It is the entire economy, including the employers, who are going to be the victims in the long run. That needs to be conveyed with the support of data. And that can be done because this has multiplier effects. And in fact, the entire recession happens because of that. It is going to have a negative impact on the aggregate demand, because if there is no money in the pocket of the workers, where will they spend and how will the industry run? The industry will have inventory, not unsold inventory. That is to say it very briefly, but I think we need to work on it and make it not a charity argument that Alan said that it's not a charity argument. It is an efficiency argument. It is an economic argument of efficiency, not of welfare. That I think we need to convey, and that would make it, make our argument stronger. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Vinod, for that insight from a different perspective, the economics of it, and how to make a different kind of argument in terms of the efficiency, in terms of what workers' wages and how wages are critical to the growth of an economy. Thanks for that, and definitely the whole question on data, which has come out very strong here, which in today's conversation once again. So that's good. Anybody else who wants to put up a question to any of the panelists before Lakshman, do you have any update on where we are with the ILO on this, in bringing this up to the ILO to take this up?
Last time I was in Singapore on 6 to 9 December, and excuse me, in the conclusion of this Asia Pacific meeting, in the resolution we've been able to get the migration agenda into it, and that means the ILC should look into it and discuss about the migration. This is our try and the new Director General is very much keen on working into the migration issues. Sorry, I'm coughing. So I hope, and we have been able to gather 5 regional ITUC AP bodies like Americas, Africa, Middle East, and SAARC and Asia Pacific in May. Sometime we will have a meeting, and waste theft and migration is one of the issues, and we want to take it up the waste theft as a specifically, and in this I mean, as we discuss the process of waste theft is so much varied that it can make a sort of a list of 10 or 15 different kinds of item, how the waste is being stolen from the workers. And one of the major, yesterday I was in Kathmandu, I'm now in Sri Lanka, and I was in Kathmandu, and the migration, Nepal had discussed about the recruitment fee, and it was discussed that it takes 17 months in Bangladesh to repay the debt they have taken, and how can the workers can survive. And today all over Nepal there's big news about it. So recruitment and waste theft, these are two basic problems we will be taking in our global meeting. What I think is, until and unless globally we raise this issue in all the 5 regions of, except the Europe, we have not been able to hook in the Europe, but we certainly will do that later on. But other 5 regions, we have to take up the migrant issues like recruitment and waste theft is a bigger. It's as the MFA and its partners discussing more and more the different variety of waste theft is being unearthed in the country of destinations. So I thank the partners and especially the MFA for it, and we can see the different aspect of waste theft. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I'm very sorry, Lakshman. I hear you coughing, and I'm very sorry for putting you on the spot like that. But I thank you for, despite that, coming out and speaking out and giving us a lot of hope in the fact that this is something that the trade unions have registered and are determined to bring this at the highest level of the ILO kind of thing. So this is important. I saw in the comment that Raj also said that this struggle has to come together, and now we've heard Vinod say another sector from another perspective. So I think it's processes like this that bring different actors together, and it'll be fantastic to see how we move together on this. Eva Sanders, I see your hand up. Let me first say Happy New Year to you. I'm sorry I was not able to say that personally a long time ago, but I've been swamped with work. But great to see you on this webinar. And go ahead, Eva.
Thank you. I have a question, boss. I have a question. I raised the hand.
Oh, well, okay, go ahead. Okay, Ashok, go ahead.
Yeah, please. So my question is that to all this panel, and of course all participants also, okay, what kind of labor laws diluted, particularly in the context of social security of migrant workers?
Right, brother. Thanks for that question. I will ask the panelists if any of them want to answer it. We are today focusing on wage theft. So if you will, if any of the panelists want to touch on that, that would be nice. But let me come back to Eva. Eva?
I don't want to waste anybody's time, but I wanted to say that our NGO Committee on Migration is sponsoring a side event which has to do with child labor. And I think it relates very much to what has been discussed, although it just means extra work. Because I think these children are not only shouldn't be working, but they and not only, of course, forced labor, but they. It says, I think it was one of the speakers said from the Philippines, it's a theft of their lives, not just of wages or anything like that, of work that they shouldn't be doing anyway. So I only mention it because I was a bit surprised by the latest ILO UNICEF report on child labor, that they didn't even mention migrant children and refugee children. And I think I just wanted to mention, I know it's extra work, but I do believe it fits into the general issue that we have been discussing today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eva, for that. And definitely it's something that does connect. And as you know, we will continue to look at these kind of connections just to also make this whole movement of us stronger. As John would say, our movement is getting stronger every day. The more we connect, the more we join forces across the globe and across different sectors. So thanks for keeping that spirit of alive, as well of John for reaching out to strengthen the movement. But let me now come back to the panelists for one last round. In terms of thoughts, any big ideas on where we can be going with this? And anything big that you want to put out there as a challenge for us? Kaylee, you first, or should we go the other way around? Ekaterina, let me start with you first.
Sure. We are really, really believing in data. As well, we do work in a region where there is so little information of what is happening. We hear of stories, but how widespread are those issues? Nobody is really able to tell us, and we want to change that. Only until governments from sending and receiving countries have the information of what is happening, to who, why, and how widespread it is, we really believe then change is going to begin. But only until then. So what we are really pushing and striving is to change the information that there is. So we are really focusing on collecting data. We need, of course, to help those workers that are in that situation at that moment. But we do need to change that, because we don't want to do this indefinitely and seeing how nothing changes. So what I would propose is really collecting powerful data, primary data, meaning that it comes directly from the worker, not from the interviewer. It has to come directly from the worker, and not guiding through question and answer, but actually having conversations, because that's when you really get to know what is happening and why, and you get to know things that you would not have asked. So what I would propose, at least for the region where we work in, is data. We need the data to show the problems, why they exist, how big they are, who is being affected, in order to begin change. So we are all for data. And that's really my what I would like to say. And through this, we will understand how much money are we talking about?
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Ekaterina, for that. Very well said, very well said. And that is something that we continue in the campaign as well. So we must continue this discussion of how we could share this information and how much data we have collected as well. So that's fantastic. And then if I went with Keely first, I went with Ekaterina first, you were in the center. So it doesn't, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, William, and thank you also to Katarina and also to Kili, and of course to all the more that we were like more than 200 earlier, no? But definitely, as we started this campaign more than 2 years ago, the starting point was data, indeed. So definitely I agree with Katrina too that we should continue collecting in the language of the MFA. We do documentation of these cases of wage theft. We say there's massive wage theft. Where are these massive wage theft cases? That's why the challenge also to all of us who believe in this campaign for justice is give us the numbers, give us the cases. And while I think the it was a question there, Katerina, that the team developed so it can withstand scrutiny legally and whatever perspective you will use, so that there is no excuse that this is really wage theft. But of course, as we go along with the campaign, we redefined it to include so many other things that the workers are being denied, no, in terms of like the benefits and their entitlements as workers. So again, not charity, not out of compassion, but that only what is rightfully theirs. So we try to capture all of this in this documentation form that we are using. It's like a uniform documentation guide to get the data of the workers. Definitely that's one, and we should continue to do that because this is the only way to make our argument very, very compelling, and so that there will be no more excuses from anyone, but particularly from the duty bearers. I think it's quite important for the countries of origin. I'm going to pick up the initiative started by Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Philippine governments. They should be, and they started to say that we should look at these regional processes and how we can leverage on these forums to bring up the issue for collective action. Because again, while the legal redress mechanism is available, it's for individual cases. And the campaign is not intended for individuals to take up their causes, their issues, but it is for particularly for the duty bearers to recognize this as something that they can do something about. But of course, it's very heartbreaking that we are into the campaign for more than 2 years already. But I think we have victories along the way, and I think one learning takeaway from this forum tonight is that of course local workers are also suffering from these wage theft cases. We definitely can benefit a lot from the experiences of how these cases are being handled across in the other side of the world. And because it's not only like local workers that Keely is dealing with, but they have cases of Mexicans and other Latinas working in the US who have been repatriated and are being able to get, well, at least winning in papers is one thing and getting the money is another. But nevertheless, this whole issue of like, there are many ways to do it, like petition signing. And there was one question of where is the role of the collective, the trade unions. Definitely, trade unions can do a lot in compelling employers, in compelling their own governments to take action on this issue. But of course, this is also very challenging in the case of migrant workers in Asia, for example, where it's very difficult for the migrant workers, particularly the low-wage workers, to be part of this union movement. But there is a lot of I see AMPO and the others, the IDWF, of course, proved them wrong that, oh, we can be organized. So I think a lot of solidarity and collective action can still push this issue big step forward. So I stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen, for that. So data collective action. And I'm glad that the John Bingham series, the first in this year, was on this issue, and it's brought us from all parts of the world together on this issue. Let's keep this collective momentum going. Gili, last words?
Sure, I'll try to be brief and absolutely just want to express my gratitude for being a part of this group, and specifically these speakers, including Muxada, who just it's just such a joy to hear these wonderful ideas. And I really do hope we will continue to have this conversation in depth. So absolutely supportive of data. And I think I'll add to that there are technology groups who would be very willing to support initiatives for very little investment on, well, for no money sometimes is my experience, in order to put something together that could potentially cross borders to share this information. I'll also plug the Department of Labor here in the US just put together a timesheet app that workers can download in multiple languages in order to track their time and compare it to the states where they work. Am I getting paid the minimum wage? Am I getting shorted somehow? You would know right away by using an app like this. But I will say that the idea to connect all of these initiatives to unions or to worker centers, we have worker centers here in the US, we need investment in those. We need governments to truly uplift the great benefits that incorporating unions and worker centers into workers' lives, into keeping wages, what it really does. And so I'd like to see more government effort and voice being given to crediting those systems where they exist and lifting them up. In the US, many temporary foreign workers do not have access to legal services funds. So some do. The H-2A program, which does agriculture, you can, if you have a claim, seek out an attorney who will be, who can access funds that come from the government to support that claim. But that's not true for a lot of worker visas. And I'd like to see more effort be put into any sort of government, or if we wanted to do an international pot of funding to support those legal cases, so that truly the most vulnerable migrant workers are getting legal support, where otherwise they might have to walk away because they don't have the money to pay someone to consult on a case, let alone pursue it. So I think there's a number of things. Ultimately, I'll leave with mobility. Workers need the right to move jobs if a job is endangering them in any way. And specifically in the US, that right is not universal. That is not something you can do if you came in on a visa. So some visas, yes, some visas, no. And that's a huge problem. And that's a problem for local workers as much as it is for migrant workers, because the same employers are likely to be the abusive ones of both populations. So just a couple more ideas, but would love to continue the conversation, and thank you for the opportunity.
No, and this conversation will definitely continue. So we will follow up with you as panelists to see how to move this forward. But just to say, I really like that idea. We ourselves are pushing for more government accountability, and I like the way you put it of recognizing and uplifting their allies in this kind of thing, the worker centers, or what we call here migrant resource centers, and definitely the role that trade unions and worker community can play in this is going to be very instrumental, just like Ellen says, in bringing that change. Thank you also for talking about this pot of money. In our very first statement on the campaign, we asked for a fund to be created for precisely this: give back the wages. Give back the wages, and governments are in a very, very good place to be able to set that fund up. So we might want to see how we continue to call for that kind of thing. And yes, ultimately, it is about mobility. If somebody is being exploited and they know they are being exploited, they should have the free right, inherent right, to move away from that. All of us must, recognize that inherent right to mobility from an exploitative situation, kind of thing. So thank you very much to the panelists, to Maksuda, who's kicked this off with her own experience, to BNSK, who continues to take up Maksuda's case and has made her as part of your leadership team for giving information to prospective women migrant workers. To the panelists, it's amazing the work that is done on the ground, and the more we connect, and Zoom has taught us how to connect, and we've got other ways of connecting. Let's do that. Let's try to build this collective movement to people like Vinod and all who raise the issue of other sectors and other perspectives. All are welcome kind of thing. The more we have in this campaign, the bigger the noise we can make. Hopefully, we'll be able to get the attention of those who are in a position to bring about change as well through policy. But thank you all. Thank you all, the 200 plus that were on this Zoom, plus those who are following on YouTube. This is probably our largest gathering we have had in this John Bingham series so far. We try to be much more bigger, kind of widespread by involving other languages as well. It works with Zoom, but as you saw, there can be some technical issues. This was our first. Forgive us for if it didn't work well for you, the language thing, but we tried. But I know slowly we'll get better at it. So thank you for your patience as well, and thank you for being part of this struggle. Have a good rest of the evening, morning, night, wherever you are. Thank you so much to everyone.
Thank you, William. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. William.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.